All right, boys, UFC 303 just wrapped up. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card, recap my prediction, break down the fight, see what I got right, see what I got wrong. Starting with the very first fight on the card, Ricky Simone versus Vinicius Oliveira. I picked Ricky Simone to win the fight, and Vinicius Oliveira got it done. You know, a guy with notoriously bad takedown defense. We've seen him taken down and held down plenty of times in his career, and he just had incredible takedown defense tonight. Now, I will say, it's not like Ricky Simone had the best takedown entries in the world. A lot of them were really poorly timed. It just seemed like he struggled with the unorthodox style of Oliveira. It seemed like he was struggling to get inside. Oliveira was doing a good job keeping him at range. Really good leg kicks. At one point, at the end of the second round, Vinicius Oliveira throws a leg kick, and Ricky Simone checks it, and it hurts Oliveira bad. Stumbles backwards. I think one of the judges gave Simone round 2 because of that, because one of the scorecards was 29-28, and the other two were 30-27. And the live odds going into round 3, they had Ricky Simone as a minus 270 favorite, after I had him losing the first 2 rounds. I mean, it was bizarre. I couldn't believe that they had Simone as a minus 270 favorite going into the last round. It didn't make any sense to me. I guess maybe they thought Oliveira's leg was completely broken. I mean, I can't think of another reason they would have Simone as such a big favorite after probably losing the first 2 rounds. Just mind-blowing to me. But yeah, good win from Oliveira. Really big step up, and he dominated Ricky Simone. Normally a pretty dominant wrestler, but today he had the worst takedown entries of all time, and when he got Vinicius Oliveira down, he just let him back up. So yeah, unfortunate. Can't see that coming. Good win from Oliveira, but I will say he looks like a guy that will get chinned at some point brutally when he gets into the rankings, like a Rob Font. I could see chinning him. He reminds me of like Bobby Green, hands down style, and he gets popped by some shots, like some jabs were snapping that head back from Ricky Simone. So I could definitely see him getting flatline KO'd at some point. Hands always by his waist. Pretty good head movement, but he still gets caught a lot. And someone with some power and some accuracy in that top 15 of the bantamweight division, they could definitely give him some problems. But yeah, Oliveira's looking to be like a pretty tricky guy to figure out for a lot of these bantamweights. I mean, Ricky Simone is no slouch. Like, he's not ranked, but he's borderline top 15. And Oliveira dominated him. So good win from Oliveira. I don't know what's next for him, but I think Pedro Munoz would be a really tough test. Not a lot of people can dominate Pedro Munoz. So I'd like to see that. That'd be pretty cool. Next fight on the card was Ray Seruya versus Carlos Hernandez. I picked Ray Seruya, and he ended up getting it done. This was a pretty good fight. Really good scrambles from both guys. This is the fight you show a new MMA fan that thinks grappling is boring. This is the kind of fight you show them. Really exciting scrambles, always looking for a submission. It's not this boring lay and pray style that a lot of people have. It's pretty rare to come by these days, but this is a pretty fun grappling fight. Ray Seruya got it done. He looks really good in the grappling. Stand-up could use a little work. But yeah, Ray Seruya gets it done by decision. Pretty good win for him. Very young, got a lot of time to improve. Excited to see what he can do in the flyweight division. Next fight on the card was Andre Arlovski versus Martin Buday. Wow, this was one of the best fights of all time. Man, I could not look away from my monitor. The best of the best going at it in the heavyweight division. I mean, I'm not sure how it gets much better than this. No, I'm kidding. This fight was awful. One of the worst fights of all time, I would say. Very boring. But what do you expect? You got 2 fat people in the cage. You know, they're tired after 2 minutes. It's exactly what you expect, man. Just complete garbage. One of the worst fights I've ever seen. And I've watched every second of those 15 minutes. Honestly, the most impressive performance from this fight was from the canvas. I wasn't sure if the structural integrity of the canvas would be able to hold up these 2 absolute giant fat-ass human beings, but it did. I was really surprised. I thought at any moment that these 2 guys could just, fall through the floor. Thank God we didn't see a takedown, because I'm not fully convinced that if we got a big slam takedown, I'm not convinced that these 2 guys wouldn't have fallen straight through the canvas. I'm so serious. So we got saved. You know, if Martin Budai went up and slammed Andre Arlovski, he could have put a giant hole through the canvas and ruined the entire event. Whole event canceled. So thank you, Martin Budai and Andre Arlovski, for no takedowns. You saved the canvas, but the fight was boring. So after that boring-ass women's fight between Michelle Waterson-Gomez and Jillian Robertson, we had Peyton Talbot versus Giannis Gamori. I mean, what can you even say? Peyton Talbot, he just steamrolled this NPC bot like we expected him to. Beat him in like 15 seconds. Really the first real shot he threw out his jab, the straight right behind it, puts Gamori down, and follows up with ground and pound, gets to finish in 15 seconds. Man, Giannis Gamori, this guy is the definition of an NPC bot. Peyton Talbot threw out his jab, and Giannis Gamori's reaction after getting hit with a jab in boxing range is to throw a calf kick. So Peyton Talbot catches him with his right hand as Gamori's throwing a calf kick in boxing range, and he gets put out cold. No shit. It's like this guy's a half-star fighter on UFC 5, and the only move he has unlocked is a calf kick. So he got hit, and he had no idea what to do, so he did the only move that he knows, which is a calf kick. Obviously didn't work because he's in boxing range, and Peyton Talbot just put him out cold. The first real impressive performance on the fight. Every other fight before this was pretty boring, other than the seruya fight had some good grappling. But this was the first real impressive performance on the fight. And it's hard to be impressive as a minus 1,600 favorite. It's hard to beat those expectations. But Peyton Talbot, he went out there and it looked like he should have been a minus 3,000 favorite, you know? I mean, Giannis Gamori, he really stood no chance. He was a sacrificial lamb. No one was picking Giannis Gamori to actually win this fight. And if you did, you're just a troll. But yeah, Peyton Talbot went out there and hit him with the right hand and sent that motherfucker back to Paris. Good win from Peyton Talbot. Did what he was supposed to. I like the Adrian Yanez call out. I think that'd be a good fight. Adrian Yanez has terrible boxing defense, but he can hit hard. So it's a good step up. And that's highlight reel potential again for Peyton Talbot. He could definitely put Adrian Yanez out. Terrible boxing defense. Saw that against Rob Font. So I like that fight because it's good highlight reel potential for Peyton Talbot, but it's also a dangerous fight because Yanez can crack. So I'd love to see that fight next. But good win from Peyton Talbot. Moving up the card, we got Charles Jourdain versus Jean Silva. I picked Jean Silva as an underdog, very slight underdog, and he got it done. Brutally finishes Charles Jourdain. Uppercut, puts him out cold. Walk-off KO from Jean Silva, the first man to KO Charles Jourdain. And man, you could tell Charles Jourdain really feared that power of Jean Silva all fight. He was really worried about it. He was trying to keep his distance, shooting takedowns, anything to avoid the boxing range, avoid the explosiveness of Jean Silva. But eventually, he couldn't avoid it any longer. And Jean Silva finds the uppercut and puts him out cold in round 2. Really good win from Jean Silva. Charles Jourdain's a tricky guy, pretty technical, good kicks, and he can be a tricky guy to figure out. But Jean Silva went out there, and I think he won. No, he definitely won round 1 because he dropped Charles Jourdain, and instead of following him into his guard, he stands him up, like a smart man does. Maybe Garrett Armfield should have done that against Brady Heastand a couple weeks ago, like I said. And maybe he would have knocked his ass out like Jean Silva did. But not everyone's as smart as Jean Silva. But yeah, this guy's really exciting. It's always fun to watch these guys with knockout power because you can get something like this. But yeah, really good performance from Jean Silva. Excited to see who he fights next. Next fight was Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. They gave it to Andre Fili by split decision. Very close fight. I scored it for Cub Swanson. I thought he won round 2 and round 3. But round 3 was pretty close. I get the scorecards. I don't hate it. Andre Fili did land some pretty nasty counters. Swanson landed big shots, but then Fili would land some big counters of his own. Fili had a lot of time in the clinch, a lot of strikes in the clinch. So pretty close round. I scored it for Cub Swanson, but I don't hate giving it to Andre Fili. But yeah, Fili gets it done. He really did not want to engage in the boxing with Cub Swanson. Anytime Cub Swanson would get into boxing range and start throwing, Fili would slip and shoot a takedown or get in the clinch, something to avoid throwing with Cub Swanson. It's very clear Cub Swanson had the power advantage between the two, which I think most people knew coming into that. That's how that was going to be. Cub Swanson's the more powerful one, and Andre Fili is the quicker one. But yeah, Fili really didn't want to strike with Swanson, but he did land some nice counters here and there. Again, round 3 is really close. I don't hate the decision, but I scored it for Swanson. Next fight was Joe Pyer versus Marc-Andre Bario. Barrios. I don't know how you say his name. I'll never be able to say it, but I don't need to, because Joe Pyer, the salty man Pyer, went out there and smoked this guy in a minute and a half. Sent him face first on the canvas, out cold. Yeah, really impressive performance from Joe Pyer. I thought we'd see a performance where, you know, he kind of blows his wide and gasses out again, and we see a close fight, because Marc-Andre is a tough guy to finish. Marc-Andre's there to be hit, but he is tough. He is hard to put away. But Joe Pyer, you know, maybe he does hit harder than Ngannou, because he starts this motherfucker in a minute and a half. Out cold, face first on the canvas. And of course, Joe Pyer knocks him out. Biggest knockout of his career, and he's immediately yelling, pissed off about something. Ah, you motherfucker. Ah. Guy, he's always fucking mad about something. I don't know what this guy's problem is, but he's always mad at somebody. You know, biggest moment of his life, and he still finds a way to be pissed off. Salty man Pyer. But he gets it done. So, good win from Joe Pyer. I'd like to see him back in the rankings now. You know, maybe patient Joe Pyer. He learned his lesson from that Jack Hermanson fight. Maybe we see a more composed Pyer that can get a win. I mean, a lot of these middleweights are garbage. Like Roman Dolidze's ranked, dude. He can fucking smoke Roman Dolidze. Easy. He can put that guy out. You know, there's a lot of garbage middleweights in the rankings that Joe Pyer can just highlight real KO. If he just stays patient and picks his shots, he can put out a lot of these lower ranked middleweights easily. Jack Hermanson's a tough guy to put out. He's a tough cookie, you know. I'm telling you right now, he could probably flatline Brendan Allen. I'd probably pick him to beat Brendan Allen in that fight. You know, Chris Curtis, you know, even Paulo Costa at this point. That guy cannot beat top level middleweights, and he gets hit a lot. So, you know, if Joe Pyer hits him, who knows what happens to Paulo Costa. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Joe Pyer after this one. But I'll be looking forward to his next fight. That was fun to watch. Really exciting knockout. Good win from Joe Pyer. And let's move on to the main card. Opening up the main card, we got Ian Machado Gary taking on Michael Venom Page. Ian Machado Gary gets it done by decision. I picked him to win by decision. Yeah, man. I was pretty confident in Ian Gary getting the win here. Michael Venom Page has no idea how to grapple. I'm not exaggerating. He is one of the worst grapplers I have ever seen in the UFC. He has no idea what he's doing. I figured Ian Machado Gary would have his way with him on the ground and win an easy decision. And Ian Machado Gary should have finished that rear naked choke in round 1. But Ian Machado Gary's grappling is nowhere near as good as I thought it would be after training down there in Brazil with Charles Oliveira. I figured he would have much better grappling than he did, and he's fighting a guy in Michael Venom Page who has no idea what he's doing on the mat. But Ian Machado Gary, his grappling was just underwhelming, but it was enough to get the job done. No controversy here. Ian Gary clearly won round 1 and 3. Michael Venom Page won in round 2. This fight was pretty boring, and people are just going to take the easy way out and blame Ian Gary. And sure, he was clinching and he was initiating the grappling and all that. But Michael Venom Page, it's not like he was doing any better, you know? Like, Michael Venom Page will just sit at range and bounce around for 30 seconds and then lunge in with his 1-2 and then repeat over and over again. Like, he's not exciting either, you know? I mean, he threw a flying knee, didn't land. Like, he didn't land anything of significance other than a jab and a 1-2. Like, they were both boring. But at the end of the day, Ian Gary, he's younger and he's got a higher fight IQ and he has more ways to win the fight. He has the grappling, and Michael Venom Page does not have the grappling. So, you know, you got the younger guy he's still improving, and he's more well-rounded than the guy who's just a point fighter, you know? Like, this one seemed easy to me. Ian Gary made it a lot harder than it needed to be, I think. Like, I really thought his grappling would be a lot better. Like, he should have choked him out in round 1. He had it, just blew it. But yeah, ultimately it was the grappling that got it done for Ian Garry, which is what I figured. I figured he would mix in the grappling and get it done over Michael Venom Page, and that's exactly what happened. He gets it done 29-28 in the main card opener over MVP. Feature fight, Anthony Smith and Roman Dolidze. I picked Anthony Smith because Roman Dolidze can't fight. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't care that Roman Dolidze won. Anthony Smith, you got to retire, big bro. It's over. If you get outstruck by Roman Dolidze, you have to retire. There's nothing left in the sport. You're not fighting Alex Pereira, dude. You got outstruck by Roman Dolidze. All right, you have to hang him up. There's nothing left for you, big bro. Like, this was pathetic. Roman Dolidze is awful. He can't strike. His takedown entries are terrible. He's slow and sloppy on the feet. And Anthony Smith still got outstruck by him by a lot. 44-84 on total strikes. 44 of 81 on significant strikes. I mean, Anthony Smith, he was gassed by like round 2. He was huffing and puffing like the big fat pig that he is. Fucking guts bouncing around. Absolutely disgusting. Anthony Smith, you're old, you're washed up, you got outstruck by Roman Dolidze. It's time to hang him up, man. There's nothing left in the sport for you. Who are you going to... Imagine what Carlos Ulberg would have done to this guy. Imagine what Carlos Ulberg would have done to Anthony Smith. Oh, my God. Yeah, Roman Dolidze gets it done, and now he is going to be top 10 in 2 weight classes, which is actually unbelievable because he is terrible. One of the worst fighters, one of the worst ranked fighters in the UFC. Just awful at everything. But yeah, he gets it done. He beats Anthony Smith. Again, Anthony Smith, you got to hang him up, man. There's nothing left in the sport. You got outstruck 44-84 by Roman Dolidze, bro. Hang him up, please. Go be with your family. You have a child to raise, dude. Go be with your kid. Like... There's nothing left for you, man. Dolidze gets it done. Good win from him. He's still garbage, but good win. Got it done. He did what he had to do. It's whatever. Yeah, let's move on to the co-main event. So Brian Ortega pulls out of the co-main event, and in steps Dan Ige on 3 hours' notice to take on Diego Lopez at a 160 catch-weight bout. I ended up going with Diego Lopez to get that one done, and he did. Very good fight. 29-28, but it was a clear Diego Lopez win. He won the first 2 rounds, and round 3, Diego Lopez a little bit tired. Dan Ige starts pouring it on a little bit, and he wins round 3. Respect to Dan Ige, man. Stepping in on 3 hours notice to fight a guy like Diego Lopez, dangerous up-and-comer. Man, nothing but respect for Dan Ige. And I know everyone's going to be giving their respects for Dan Ige, but man, you gotta give Diego Lopez his props too. This guy cut to 146 the night before the fight, then gets a call from Brian Ortega's camp saying Brian Ortega isn't going to make 145 and that they're going to do 155. So then he rehydrates back to 155, preparing to fight Brian Ortega. And then just hours before their fight, Brian Ortega pulls out with a fever, and in steps Dan Ige at 161. He's going for Brian Ortega, who is a submission guy. You know, that's his main thing. You got to worry about the submissions of Brian Ortega, not so much to stand up. To a guy like Dan Ige with power in his hands, dangerous boxer. You know, you're flipping like that. You're going from a camp preparing for Brian Ortega to fighting Dan Ige in 3 hours. You know, you have no camp to prepare for that. So just as much respect to Diego Lopez for staying on the card through all of this. He could have pulled out the second Brian Ortega said he couldn't make 145. Point blank. He could have pulled out right there. But he accepts a lightweight bout, and then he accepts a 3 hour notice fight against Dan Ige. So both these guys are legends. Nothing but respect. Diego Lopez gets it done. Really good fight. Both of these guys are legends. I love both of them. Awesome fight. Let's move on to the main event. Main event, the short notice fight between Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka. Alex Pereira gets it done by brutal second round KO with a perfect head kick. It's funny, the first fight was arguably stopped too soon, and this one was stopped too late. I mean, yeah, dominant performance from Alex Pereira. He looked much, much better than he did in the first fight against Jiri, where Jiri did have some success. He did land some shots. He did get Pereira against the cage, and he did land some bombs on Pereira's chin. But in this fight, Jiri had absolutely no success. None. Dominant performance from Alex Pereira. Again, it's the leg kicks. But I'm going to be honest, I don't even think leg kicks even affect Jiri Prashka. I mean, the guy sits in a fucking shack in the woods with like nothing but water and darkness for 3 days. I don't think a fucking leg kick's gonna stop him, honestly. That's just my take. But at the end of round 1, after dominating him for the entire round, Alex Pereira lands a, was it a left hook? I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look. He lands a shot right at the horn and drops Jiri Prochazka. But then at the very beginning of round 2, not even 10 seconds in, Alex Pereira lands a head kick on Jiri Prochazka, drops him. The fight's over right there. But Pereira follows up with ground and pound to seal the deal and remain the light heavyweight champion of the world. Now, there's a lot of talk of him going to heavyweight. No, you cannot send him to heavyweight, man. He has got to fight Ankalaev. This guy has never fought a wrestler. That's all. That's all I want to see. Fight a wrestler, please. Is he really going to go all the way up 3 divisions in the UFC without fighting a single person that has an opposite style as him, that can wrestle? I mean, this guy's a glory kickboxer, and he's never fought a dominant wrestler. We have to see him versus Ankalaev, man. I know people don't like Ankalaev, but that's a real test for Pereira. And I would pick Pereira to win that fight, but I want to see it, you know? I want to see him stop the takedowns of a dominant wrestler, someone who can chain wrestle like Magomed Ankalaev. I want to see that. I don't want him to go up 3 divisions without fighting a single dominant wrestler. And I know you're going to say, oh, he fought Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz isn't primarily a wrestler, dude. He's a striker first, and he can mix in the wrestling. He's well-rounded. Magomed Ankalaev, he's the same way, sure, but he is much more willing to mix in the wrestling, and he's a much more dominant wrestler than Jan Blachowicz. So we have to see that, and then, sure, he can move up to heavyweight. That I'd love to see it. But, come on, he can't duck the only wrestler in the division and then move up to heavyweight. Like, come on. At least let him fight Ankalaev at the end of the year, and then early next year, maybe mid next year, he can fight at heavyweight. I'd love to see that after he fought Ankalaev. Like I said, I think he would beat Ankalaev. Ankalaev was getting his legs destroyed by Jan Blachowicz. I think Pereira would do the same. And I think, I mean, at this point, I don't know, the power that Pereira has is a little suspicious at this point, honestly. Like, he just touches you and you go out. It's unbelievable. So I think he would probably put out Ankalaev too at this point. But, I mean, you got to see it, right? He hasn't fought anyone that would show us what happens if he's taken down and held down. You know, no one's been able to do it except Jan Blachowicz in the first round of their fight, but that fight was at altitude, and after 1 round, they were both gassed out of their mind. So I want to see Ankalaev. I want to see him defend some takedowns, and I want to see him sleep that inbred fucker, and then he can go up to heavyweight, or he can get exposed for having no grappling, which I doubt. I mean, that's probably all he's been working on since he came to the UFC, is his grappling. He's a glory kickboxer. He doesn't need to practice kickboxing, and he's been doing it all his life. So at least give him the test of a wrestler, you know, and then he can move up to heavyweight. I'm fine with that. But dominant performance from Alex Pereira, made it look easy. And I know I made a video saying I'm worried about Alex Pereira. In that video, I talked about the ways Jiri Prochazka could win the fight. You know, I said he's got to mix in the takedowns early and often. He did not do that. So obviously that video is not going to be accurate. So you can go back and troll me all you want. I'm sure you've never been wrong about anything in your life, dude. You're all Mr. Perfect out there, you know. You're all just going to go troll me because you've never been wrong before in your life. But it's whatever, dude. You know, this shit wouldn't be fun if you just picked the favorites every time. You got to throw out an underdog every now and then. So, yeah, that's UFC 303. Pretty good card for what it was, you know. All the cancellations. You know, we had Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree, and that turned into fucking Anthony Smith and Roman Dolidze, so what a shit show that was. But yeah, it was a good card for what it was. I really enjoyed it. Dan Ige, Diego Lopez was a really good scrap. Obviously, the main event was awesome. But now we have a 2-week layoff, and then we're coming back to Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez main event, and then a Amanda Lemos versus Verna Jandiroba main event. So awesome. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. But yeah, I went 8-3 on this card. 8 correct, 3 incorrect. The ones I got wrong, obviously, Jiri Prochazka. I also got Anthony Smith wrong, and I got Ricky Simone wrong. I got every other fight correct. Let me know what you guys thought about it. What was your favorite moment of this card? Let me know, and I will see you next time.